Poland shoots down dozens of Russian drones that violated their airspace. Yes, on the 10th of September, dozens of drones invaded the airspace of Poland while actually attacking Ukraine, and they were shot down by Polish and NATO forces. Guys, what is opening here? And that's not all. There's a big training exercise coming up. Hang on, we're going to go into that. We're going to talk about China, North Korea, and some really weird stuff too. Guys, we are in testy times, so I want you to be aware right now because if you've never been prepping, you better get at it. And if you are prepping, make it serious because, guys, here's what's happened here is we do know the most up-to-date information is that multiple Russian drones did violate the Polish airspace, as I said, on the 10th. Right now, it's still it is the 10th here now, the 10th of September, 2025, uh, during a larger Russian air assault on Ukraine. But Polish military forces, joined by NATO, shot down several of these drones over Poland. The authorities responded by scrambling jets, activating their air defenses, and temporarily closing key airports, including Warsaw's Chopin Airport. And there was also another airport that was involved in supplying arms to Ukraine. It was closer to Ukraine that got shut down. There were NOTAMs, notice to airmen were issued. So this was a big deal. Poland described this incursion as an act of aggression against Poland, although there's no evidence that these drones actually struck any targets on Polish soil. Now, U.S. Congressman Joe Wilson, Republican, came out and stated that this was an act of war. And, he said that Iranian supplied Shahed drones were the ones used in this attack. And so, but he was kind of inferring this was an attack on Poland itself, which doesn't appear to be the case. Again, he's a Republican from South Carolina's second congressional district, but he was joined by Democrat Senator from Illinois, Dick Durbin. So these two were really chomping on this discussion. So, but that's not all. That's not all we got to be concerned about here because guess what? There's more to it because there's a big military training exercise coming on between Belarus and Russian forces right on the border of Poland from the 12th to the 16th of September. This starts in just 2 days. And with all these tensions ratcheting up, with Poland so hyper excited now, what could go wrong? You know, our good friend Nate over Canadian Prepper, he likes to tell us there's no such thing as military exercises. They're just World War III surprises. Is that the case here? What's cooking? We don't know how this is going to play out. But the tensions have been getting higher and higher and ratcheting up, and Russia has been increasing its attacks. Other countries in the area are fearful that they are about to get hit. You might know or have heard that a lot of the countries along Russian Belarusian borders, especially the Baltic nations and Poland, and maybe a little bit Finland, they're flooding wherever they can their old peat bogs with water, much to the chagrin of the local farmers who are losing farming land to make it much more difficult for Russian tanks to cross the borders. Because even though Putin's come out, he says, I'm not going to invade any of these countries. Uh, they're concerned. Now, I really don't know just off the surface why Russia would actually want to invade these nations because he's still got his hands full with Ukraine. He hasn't accomplished his objectives in Ukraine yet. So, what possible military purpose could he have in actually attacking a NATO nation at this point in time? Uh, Maybe he's thinking that we're about to hit him, and he's got that philosophy: you got to hit them if you think you're going to be hit. Strike first. That could be it. And based on some reports and some statements from some NATO generals talking about taking Kaliningrad, eh, and talk about how Palantir could be used to take out all the Russian systems, maybe he's got some reason to be a little bit concerned. I don't know, guys. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not saying that he would do this because He has his hands full, quite frankly, with Ukraine right now, although that may be a limited item. I've just saw an article a few weeks ago from a NATO general, retired general, talking about how, well, Ukraine just got it all wrong. They need to concentrate their forces and make a push on Russia's weak area. Like that's some new big revelation. He made this article and everybody, yeah, listen to this guy. This is the old philosophy of Clausewitz, the military analyst, historian, or whatever you're not historian. He was a premier military analyst from, decades ago in Germany. I mean, like, I believe 17, 1800s, Clausewitz. I have to go back and check all this, that guys, but he was the premier theoretician for how battles should be waged. He wrote the books on it. And this was exactly what he advocated way back then. And Ukraine's not done it. And this has been talked about in other previous articles, before people forgot about it and thought this general was some kind of wise brainiac for stating the obvious. But here's the deal. The reason Ukraine is not doing it, and they've been chastised for not doing it in the past, is the Russian forces are so overwhelming across so many fronts that it's been exceedingly difficult for them to stage an attack like that. If you might recall, they actually broke through the Russian lines back, a couple of years ago, a year or two ago, and they didn't move on and take advantage of it. And I was shocked. I said, "Whoa, they've lost a war." You take over you open up enemy lines, you penetrate through them, and you don't go around in the rears and take a huge strategic win advantage out of that and cut off their supply lines and, really hammer them from the rear. They didn't do that. The reason for this apparently is that Ukrainian forces are stretched too thin. They can't handle it. They've got to provide defenses wherever they're, which suggests to me they're losing. I could be wrong. They pulled off a lot of things with drones, but on the ground with their military, with their infantry, where it counts in the end, they are having a tough time. You got to remember, this is a war of attrition. And war of attrition, Russia's got more than Ukraine. Although they're saying there's 700,000 Russian forces in play and 900,000 Ukrainians. Typically, an invaded army needs to outnumber the army it's invading by 4 to 1. So it sounds like Russia has actually a smaller army, but up against the Ukrainians, but they're still making incremental gains. Now, how is that? I am not advocating, for what's happening here, either side. War is horrible. It's a horrible exercise. All kind of horrible atrocities occur against people who aren't deserving of it, civilians. But guys, Ukraine is they're in a pickle here, and I say unless NATO jumps in, which I hope they don't, at least as long as the United States is part of it. Uh, Ukraine is not going to fare well in this war. They should have negotiated. As a matter of fact, Zelensky should have negotiated back in 2022 when they actually pushed back against the Russians and got to open the hand and were having negotiations. The Russians were to negotiate the table, willing to negotiate a deal because they thought they were going to get beat. And Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, went over there and talked Zelensky out of it. Zelensky would have saved a lot of losses in cities and manpower and people, and both sides would have saved a lot of loss in human lives. And at that point in time, Ukraine had a lot more territory than they got now. So not negotiating at that point was a bad deal for Ukraine and probably a good deal for Russia if their total objective is land. But Russia's lost a lot too in this war. It's been a very ugly affair, to put it at the least. But anyway, so like I said here, this new exercise could be possibly a prelude to something else. If it's not, maybe Poland will still act on it and cause it to be a prelude. Now, I've seen other articles lately saying that, Poland's now got the third largest army in NATO. Only, the first being the United States, second being Turkey. Turkey has a huge military. But in terms of Western Europe, a Western European nation, the Polish army military is now the largest. But it's only like 200,000, so it's not, the kind of numbers you necessarily want to really stand up against Russia. But here's another thing. Russia, when you conquer a territory and have to hold it, if the territory doesn't want to be under your boot heel, you've got to maintain that territory the whole time. And that requires a lot of logistics and policing. And so Russia will still have their hands full of Ukraine and with Ukraine if they were to take it. So if they then move on to the Baltic nations, they're going to play with the same game there. And then Poland, how much of this can Russia absorb? I don't see it happening just because I don't think Russia really has enough manpower with their diminishing demographics to try to take all this. I could be wrong. They might blitzkrieg across. We know the Macedonians, a little tiny Macedonia, conquered the world once. But the Macedonians were a whole nother character, and they fought a lot smarter, I think, than the Russians. The Russians just throw men and stuff at a battle. They've always done that. Historically, they just throw tons of manpower, material in, and throw them all in a meat grinder, and they get ground up, and they just keep throwing more and more until they win. That's been the Russian approach always. And it's a brawn, not a brain approach. So, and take it for what it is. That's the way it is. So, Poland's not scared of Putin. We're Mongolian Russians anyway, says Stephens J. Well, I don't think Poland is scared of him, but Poland's getting prepared, which is a smart move on the side of the Polish people. Now, the question is, will there be misinterpretations during these exercises? So, the Prime Minister of Poland, Mr. Donald Tusk, very almost sounds like an Anglo name, right? He is taking steps to guard against these threats of a potential attack from Russia and the Belarusian forces. He's shutting down rail crossings and border openings and taking steps to ensure the safety of his citizens, which is what he should do. Uh, I don't really think Russia will move in, but like I said, there's always a possibility for misinterpretations and accidents and escalation of things, just like occurred with this incursion of Russian drones into Polish airspace, which got a bunch of them shot down, which should have been predictable. Now, there's either one or two things happened here. Either one, Russia made a mistake and there's a miscalculation, and drones they thought were going to be in Ukraine wind up going to Ukrainian Polish airspace, or two, they're testing the resolve of NATO, which is what the congressman I just mentioned earlier, state and Polish forces, and a lot of people in NATO are saying this was a test of NATO's resolve. Well, they saw their aircraft get shot down, their drones get shot down. So I don't know, guys. Um, the birth rates and number of births, couple of factors to consider. Yes, you're right, Arnold. Russia really can't afford to prosecute this stuff too far because they have a diminishing demographic. They don't have a replacement birth rate. So, but neither does Ukraine. Ukraine's even worse, and all of Western Europe's in trouble in this regard. But when your birth rates are down, you need to protect the population you have. So, is Putin shortchanging the future of his own country, the long-term future, for short-term gains? Politicians do that a lot, unfortunately, and that may be the case here. I don't know. But I did talk about in the past how Russia really has always historically felt it was important to try to keep Europeans from advancing back into Russia and closing things like the Zalaki Strait. They actually want to close the northern corridor above the Caucasus Mountains and the southern corridor below the Caucasus Mountains, which means it'd be going at least into Moldova and a little bit beyond if they could to secure these areas because it's just flat land straight into Moscow, and Moscow has been invaded repeatedly from Europe, and they've got a lot of apprehension on over this. I've been to a opera in the Russian Diet, I believe is what they call their Congress over there, their parliament. Inside the Red Square, and they were still celebrating beating the Germans in World War II in this opera, big event, dancing Cossacks and all, beautiful event to watch. But it was all a celebration of their win of World War II, which they lost tens of millions. They lost a lot of people in that combat. We haven't got that kind of experience in America. We don't have those kind of cultural scars to carry. So this is the fear that gnaws at the subconscious of the Russians. Uh, be it justified or not, I don't think really and truly European forces have the wherewithal to invade Russia either. Even though some generals talk about it, maybe they'll try it. So let's hope not, but it's just not a smart move on anybody's part. We need to calm this junk down and find some road to peace because we live in a war with advancing technology that's going to be so powerful that we can't survive it. When the stuff when you take the stuff from our minds and put it in our hands that we're about to have, without love in our hearts, the devices we'll have in our hands will wipe ourselves out. We just can't sustain this civilization much longer unless we find a way to change our ways. We're warlike people. How do you do that? And how do you do that when so many other countries right now are hard over for acquiring dominance, changing the world order and putting themselves at top, like China principally. And Russia's probably just a lackey for China. Now, if Russia were to move into NATO nations, it would probably be because they're a lapdog, a poodle. The bear is a poodle now to the big dragon. And maybe the big dragon would want Russia to take some kind of action to distract us as they hit Taiwan. So these are all possibilities to consider. Now, all that said, the thing to bear in mind is that there's now a new defense policy on the desk of Hegseth. And this defense policy in our Department of War now, which is a telling change in names. But supposedly this defense policy says that the United States is going to withdraw from the global theaters, from Europe, from Asia, and just focus on homeland defense and maintaining our sphere of influence here in the Americas. Now, we've lost a lot of that to China, right here in South and Central America. So maybe that's part of what's going on in Venezuela. Maybe that's the real game, what that's really all about. So is to start changing, a shift in this. And there's also been reported that Trump is actually mulling an attack on Venezuela. I don't know what's the case there because Congress actually has passed some laws taking some of the teeth out of his capacity to attack people as designated as terrorists as they had from 9/11 forward for presidents. So well, that passed the House, but it hasn't passed the Senate and probably won't. So they're trying to take away some of Trump's powers. Probably will not prevail. But now, is the United States really going to draw in? You might remember I've had David Pine on my channel many times. I have to bring him back soon, real soon, because it's been a while since I've had him on. A lot has happened, but he was actually advocating a world in which we divide, basically spheres of influence between the United States, China, and Russia, and say, you don't bother us here, we won't bother you there, kind of a drug deal with these other superpowers that we pull back. And so this kind of plays into that. And part of the reason given for this is the United States is just broke. Now, that's true. We're broke and going broker. Our ability to finance all this stuff is going down the tubes fast. Now, for countries like South Korea, for countries like China, not China, I meant Japan, pardon me, for countries like the Philippines, and some of my friends who are probably in the chat room right now from Australia, New Zealand. I don't know how your alliances are going to work if the United States pulls back. How much would the United States pull back? Will that mean you're on your own against the big dragon? Does that mean that all these countries will just capitulate to the dragon? Taiwan and all up and down the island chains there. What would happen to our territory in Guam if that were to happen? Would we abandon Guam to make this? How do you defend Guam if you turn the whole region loose? What happens to Hawaii becomes vulnerable again? Because China's talking about they want a big military naval base in the middle of the Pacific. Pacific. So where does this go? And is that genuine? There is big indicators that this paper on Hex's deaths is not genuine. And to make that case, I want to share something with you guys here just to make the case that that may not be genuine. But even whether it is or not, my friends over in Australia, Japan, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines. You need to keep an eye on the ball here and be considering a real tight alliance between yourselves and shoring up your own defenses. Make your countries like a porcupine that no big dragon would want to bite. That's the best thing you can do. In my humble opinion, if you capitulate the dragon, eventually you're going to lose. You'll lose everything, including your own sovereignty, your own humanity. Time they get done with you. So I'm going to do a share screen here. Give me a second. And see if I can pull this up. Where am I at here? That's it right there. Bing, 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 bing. And here we go. I think. There we are. U.S. to revive Cold War era naval base as world's largest weapons hub near China. What they're talking about is Subic Bay in the Philippines, about 55 miles northwest of Manila. Subic Bay, which had been closed down. Well, apparently we're going back at the invite of the Filipinos because they are very worried about China. China's been very aggressive against the Philippines. And so they're actually inviting us back in. And so what they're talking about here, this will be the world's biggest weapons hub and weapons manufacturing center, apparently, to try to counter the Chinese, backed by the United States of America, which currently actually has mutual defense treaties with the Philippines and with Japan. So if we were to pull out of those, we'd have to pull out of those defense treaties. I I have a hard time seeing that. I really do. I don't think we're pulling out of those treaties. Do we defend Taiwan? It becomes a big question. By that philosophy, maybe not. But if you lose Taiwan, you've opened everything up, and China gets a major strategic gain for dominance in the region. So just militarily, I don't know what's going to happen, guys. But we're looking at China. China has just opened up brand new air bases in ports, just been opened up, all for the purpose of attacking Taiwan. So this idea that China won't attack Taiwan, I don't know, guys. It's looking pretty bleak. So now here's an article where this South Korean mayor named Hong, excuse me, Hong Kong. Yeah, okay, it all kind of rhymes, right? He has done some analysis and he claims that he thinks there was a deal reached between Kim Jong-un in South Korea and Xi Jinping. And he thinks the deal is to prevent the United States from exercising the U.S. Global Defense Posture Review premise that if China attacked Taiwan, that we would take forces out of South Korea and allocate them to defending Taiwan because we have a lot of forces up there. So in order to do this, what North Korea would do would do some maneuvers, maybe an attack of some type on South Korea. Who knows what is up its sleeve? But apparently, South Korea would take some actions to prevent the U.S. from moving these forces to basically keep them in check in South Korea so they don't go down and help Taiwan. And in exchange for this, North Korea gets a lot of support from China, new support, and more technology from China and Russia to use in their weapon systems development, like they've been getting all along, as we know. And oh yeah, by the way, they just discovered a brand new intercontinental ballistic missile base in North Korea that we didn't know about. So we got a whole new missile threat against a raid against the United States because the missiles from this base could reach the United States, nuclear missiles, and North Korea has been building them to beat the band. So what is happening here, guys? Are we on the verge of a nuclear war? Where are we going? I don't know. Um, anyway, let me show a couple other things here. So, yikes. Anyway, as you might know, Russia has activated their World War III doomsday radio, sending out some real cryptic messages. And there's some coordinates in there that makes NATO nations think that he's prepared for a NATO attack. I don't know. That's a lot of speculation. We know these things get activated. It does not necessarily mean that there is going to be an attack, but these type radio systems are used typically to marshal militaries. Primarily, they're used for nuclear forces, actually. Oh, yeah. That exercise on the border of Poland is going to include nuclear exercises and the Reznik missiles. There's short-range theater ballistic missiles capable of launching nuclear weapons. So yeah, Poland's going to be on big alert. So is all of NATO over. I'm not sending you chats, Booker. I'm watching on my phone. I'll go to the chat room here on the computer here in a minute. But it looks like my chat here is frozen. Hope we're all still on the air here. So we'll see in a minute. But anyway, I can't keep this going long. I gotta hit the hay, guys. I gotta get up real early in the morning. What is this? Oh yeah. And they changed topics to get really weird. I said, I'm going to bring you some weird stuff. I need to take this over to Galactic Greg's. But this is what was testified to in Congress today. And they showed a Hellfire missile taking a strike on something. And apparently it just kept on going. Look at this.
Jump to the conclusion that I believe that there are, aliens coming from another planet. But I'm open to that. And I think that it's our responsibility, especially when we're seeing that we have a government that is actively blocking information from us. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an...
Hey, we got a super chat. Thank you, Hawaiian girl. I appreciate salute to you for the super chat. Thank you very much. All righty. I will check my PayPal shortly to see if I've got anything there. See if who might be in the room. That's all depending on who's in the room. Guys, this is weird stuff, is it not? Check this out.
Or this object off the coast.
Let's see if I can blow this up. Hope y'all can see this when I do this.
Of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile.
I think what the American people should think when seeing that video, along with others before me, is that
direct hit. It kind of did a perturbation and just kept on flying, whatever it was. Direct hit by a Hellfire missile.
There is something out there, and we should know as the people what it is.
Has RO, the Air Force, or the FBI ever followed up with you personally about the Red Square event?
I did have follow-up by Aero, nothing with the Air Force. They let me know that they were unable to locate any records, that the records had been destroyed by the Air Force.
Our federal government has a history of destroying records. Are you scared for your safety?
That's a complicated question. So being here today, if I say the wrong word, technically I can be charged with espionage. Espionage is a death penalty. Whistleblowers have faced it.
Wow, what about that, guys? All right, let's stop this video. This is really more of a topic for, you know what that reminds me of? Kind of reminds me of the so-called Battle of Los Angeles, which some people think was a UFO. Some people say this object sustained all kind of artillery and ground rifle fire.
A squad of more than 50 Mexican Marines and U.S. agents swarmed the area.
Well, they had this stopped. I hate it when they auto start. Guys, now the official word is this was a weather balloon that got loose and started to panic, where a lot of people thought the Japanese were attacking Los Angeles. They didn't know what it was. They put the spotlights on it. They shot at it. Well, it caused a lot of pandemonium in Los Angeles. 3 people passed away due to car accidents, and 2 people had heart attacks and started pushing daisies as a result of this. Maybe it was the overreaction of weather balloons? Yeah, possibly. But there are those who maintain that this was something else and it was shot at repeatedly and nothing hurt it. It just stayed there. It sustained all the fire going at it and wasn't at all affected. So there's various reports. Those may not be credible. The official sources say, oh, it was just a weather balloon. It broke loose that started this whole pandemonium. I don't know. You tell me. It's hard to know. They're throwing us a bone. Yeah, that may be it. There, deep function 100,000 minus 1. Well, here's the weird one. Here's the weird one. George Knapp, who is, coast to coast, had brought documents out of Russia on the wall fell. Actual official Russian military documents. And these documents claimed that something was flying around over a Russian ICBM base for 4 hours, and it would break apart, come back together, and zip, zip, zip. And that it actually turned on all the nuclear missiles at this base and put the correct launch codes in them and had them ready to fire. And there was like nothing they could do about it. Fortunately, they weren't launched, but they were right on the edge that this almost launched World War III. So if there is something out there, it may not be nice. I think a lot of what we see is our own stuff. But would we have went over and done something crazy foolish like that? Or is this something else? I kind of think the stuff is demonic, but that's another story. At least it has the same appearances of what we have historically called demonic. I don't know, guys. We could go into that. This is a topic for my other channel more. I just wanted to bring these up since this is in the news. And when I was doing my other live, you need to go over Galactic Greg's. I just did an entire video over there on this Comet 3I Atlas or whatever it is. So go to that channel and watch that. I'm probably going to be on Rex Bear's show tomorrow, Leak Project, on the same topic. But go over there and watch that video. A lot of people in the chat were asking me about these incidents here, so that's why I'm covering them here, just because it's now and tonight. But George Knapp made this case. Let's see if we can get part of this video here. I already played part of it. Got past the commercial.
What happened to the Russians that came forward to you in 1993, and were there any repercussions for them?
Well, there were. The first thing that happened when I talked about this after getting back and going through the files and things and sifting through it, the Russian physicist who had helped us be introduced to all these people wrote back and said there was a huge eruption, that there was the real right far autocratic forces that wanted a return of the USSR had really go after these guys. They described them as traitors. Nikolai Kapranov, the physicist friend of mine, said, look, if this had happened 5 years earlier, we would be in prison. If it had happened 10 years earlier, we would have been shot. Right. Luckily, at that point, Putin was not in power, but none of those people that we talked to on that trip in 1993 would ever talk to me again. I went back in 1996.
That's when Yeltsin was in power, when he got this. So.
And it was like I had the plague. I spoke to different people, but they were scared. And eventually, the story was spun where the Ministry of Defense officials who gave us this information were described as ufologists who said there was nothing really significant to these.
So what happened? What do you think? I don't know. Strange stuff. Strange stuff, guys. Look at this. Look at the left coast, guys. Earthquakes out the gazoo along, looky here, San Andreas. Earthquakes here at the point of the Juan de Fuca plate. And over here where this volcano is at, going off. And what is this? Is this Mount Rainier? What is that? Waterville, Washington. That's too far east to be Mount Rainier. We got something over here. And Oklahoma. We got a couple over here in Texas, Mentone. Puerto Ricans are busy dancing. A lot of dancing going on over here in the Virgin Islands right now, it looks like. So the Puerto Ricans ain't got the whole show. But if you look here, we back off the Kamchatka Peninsula is she's rocking. Those earthquakes over there are still popping. And of course, we've always got stuff around Indonesia. Japan, real active region. Hawaii is active. And my guys right in Australia, New Zealand, nothing too much there except all the stuff up in Indonesia. So I just wanted you guys to see that stuff. Anyway, I'm going to stop the share here. Oh, yeah, guys. Gold has gone up. Last time I checked, it was over 3,600 and I think $40 per troy ounce. It has really shot up. It's been going up like a rocket for the last several months. And I can show you more reasons for that. I'm not going to show you a ton of articles tonight. But, you might want to go check out defythegrid.com and maybe get you some of these gold backs because you can stick these in your wallet. This is 1/1000th 1/1000th of an ounce, troy ounce of gold. And it's something that's fungible, unlike a big gold bar you got to shave off. And you can buy eggs and bread with this thing if you can barter for it. Would be a barter arrangement. But just something to look at, guys. Go to defythegrid.com and use discount code Green Gregs and get 1% off. Green Gregs, don't forget that, because I'll get you 1% off your purchase. Alrighty, guys. So I am going to go over and look and see what you guys are saying in the chat room over here, if I can see it, see if there's anything I missed. Oh, it's shut down. Click on it and it closes. Let's try that again, because this chat room here is not really advancing as much as I like to see. I can see more over here. I do appreciate the super chat from Hawaii Girl. And if I can get this thing reopened, give me a second, guys. Here we are. I just want to really go through the chat real fast, and then we're going to call it a night. Weather phenomena, earthquakes, hurricanes, sleeper cells. We got a lot going on, Arnold. A lot going on right now. All right, this didn't go way back up to the beginning. Holy cow, I caught you live, says Tom Murray. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Cindy Lou, halo to you. Drew Hurst, referring to the statements politicians made. That's a dangerous thing to play with. So, yeah, I've seen some of these comments. Drew Hurst saying, cheers, mate, to Arnold. USA is fighting on 6 fronts right now. Venezuela's drug cartels, ICE agents, National Guard moves in Chicago, which looks like it's happening in New York City, California. Yeah, there's just too much going on. Too much going on. Really and truly. And we got Javis D, maybe Javis D Halesco. Hello, family. Did I say that right? I'm assuming the J's are pronounced the way it would be in Spanish, which would be a H. All right, so yeah, the world's going insane right now. There's no way around it. The whole world is just going insane. So let's see if I missed anything. Looking at the chat here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to I don't know, sometimes if Kim Possible don't always chat in the chat room, but when she's on, I get a super chat from her. So just in case, I'll check, to give credit where credit's due. She likes to go to my website, Green Greg's, the donate page. Let me check this real quick. I don't know if she's in the house or not, but we'll find out real quick. Legendary Bunny Man and Bradford. Good morning, Greg. How you doing? Give me 1 second here. Oh, shoot. Put in my password. I'll check myself, entered it correctly, because my fingers and thumbs are about as big as 4 or 5 keys on here, and I really can't type or text, especially texting. All right. Kim Possible must not be in the house tonight. That's good, fine, because we are late. But I always like to check. I like to give credit where credit's due. So, Greg, I saw Trump making one town in Alabama Rocket City. It was already the Rocket City. It's been called the Rocket City since the early 50s. Huntsville, Alabama. That's where I was at. I founded the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society back in 1983, which was a chapter of the L5 Society, later become the National Space Society. And we built our Halo rockets there and launched some high-altitude balloons. If that's why I say Halo, I got a rocket from a balloon and off we go. We're going to fly out a rocket into space. We're going to begin the amateur space race. Halo. And I got some Guinness Book of World Records. Got me a Space Pioneer Award. And we did some crazy stuff back in the days. Spun a company off from it. So, yeah, Huntsville, Alabama has been called the Rocket City from a long time. And it started with the movement of von Braunstein from Fort Bliss, Texas, to Huntsville, Alabama. And they started set up the Army Ballistic Missile Agency there. And later, NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center was spun off from that, where they developed the Saturn V rocket that took men to the moon. And later we developed this space launch system, which flew around the moon at least one time. So a lot of big rocket stuff there. And there's still a lot of rocket stuff there. Blue Origin is doing their rocket development there. And had it not been for a tiff that Senator Shelby had with SpaceX, maybe SpaceX would be doing their rocket work there instead of Texas. So, in any event, um, well, I did not know. You didn't know that, Rodney? Yeah, Huntsville, Alabama's been like a big secret. There's more PhDs and more engineers per capita in Huntsville, Alabama than any other nation, city on earth, at least in the free world. Maybe China's got some new wrinkle on that because China graduates more engineers per year than we graduate lawyers in the United States. But as far as I know, at least in the free world, there's more engineers and more PhDs per capita in Huntsville, Alabama. And it's been that way for decades. I used to tell people you couldn't throw a rock without hitting two or three engineers or scientists in Alabama, at least in Huntsville, Alabama. Now, Huntsville is very different than the rest of Alabama, you might say, but I've spent decades working in and out of Huntsville and the vicinity. When I lived in Tony, Alabama, I was, closer drive to Tony than I am to Snowflake, or to Huntsville than I am to Snowflake. Also much closer to Tennessee. So, yeah, Huntsville, Alabama is a big high-tech center. And that's the biggest reason to move the Space Force there, because you got a better labor pool to pull from than you might have in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And Trump originally in his first administration was setting the Space Force up to be headquartered in Huntsville. It was Biden that pulled it away to punish the Republican senators from Alabama and sent it to Colorado. That's the story. That's the truth. So the Space Force was originally intended to be set up in Huntsville, Alabama. And y'all might recall my hat, which I wore for a long time on here. This got the Space Force emblem on it. That is what that is. That's the emblem of the Space Force. So hats wore out. But that is the emblem of the Space Force. So, yeah. So Winter von Braun I've been to his office many times where his office was, and he was already gone by the time I was there. But I knew a lot of the old Germans, the old German rocket team. In fact, Conrad Dannenberg, one of the top old Germans, I used to go to his house and carve his Christmas turkey. So did about 3 years. And I knew Ernst Stuhlinger, who was really their top scientist. When I was a mere 19-year-old, I think I was 19 by then. Yeah, I was 19, standing in the Von Braun Astronomical Society's planetarium, just a kid. Ernst Stuhlinger took great pains to tell me how they erected the dome in that planetarium. The fact that these guys spent a lot of time to try to encourage young people to go to school and get educations, become engineers, and have space careers. They really did a lot and Conrad Edinburgh joined Space Camp and inspired hundreds of thousands of young students. And they didn't care what color you are, whether you was male or female. One of the top people we promoted to try to fly a experiment from the time he was in high school through college, and eventually got a career in NASA. Was a young black man. He used to be named. Well, I won't name his name. It might be sensitive to be naming names, but and he was working intimately with the Germans. There was, all these people make all these allegations about these people. They were some of the nicest, most polite people I've ever met anywhere, anytime. They're nothing like I hear them characterized on a lot of other stupid YouTube channels and news of by people that don't know them, never met them, sitting there talking smack about stuff they don't know anything about, which happens all the time. Anyway, Von Braun, yes, Winter von Braun. I didn't meet him because he went to DC. They lured him away from Marshall so they could lay off a bunch of people there. They knew they couldn't do it with him down there. They promised him a Mars program if he go to Washington, D.C. And they gave him a closet office, and it really broke his spirit. He went working for Fairchild and did some work on satellite applications to use satellites to take signals to remote villages. They had a satellite and a antenna set up in India. Well, we're helping the poor people in India with this thing. And but von Braun was so despondent over having been deposed and what happened to his people, He died of cancer shortly after. He didn't last long after they took him out from his position. He was really, uh, it wrecked him as a person to see what they, how they snookered him and what they pulled on his team. They just went in and fired everybody, or they basically told him, you either take a demotion or you're out. And one stayed in, Winter Dom. Winter Dom worked in building 4203 for years after that was a building I was working in. That old guy, he must have been in his 90s. He used to run up and down the stairs all the way to the fifth floor. I'd see him in the morning. I'd say, Morgan and Morgan's. And he'd always reply, good morning, because they were always told to reply in English. But I would just say, Guten Morgens. That's another way of saying good morning. He'd always reply, good morning. Very polite, very nice guy. But he retired and then he passed away a year or two after he retired. All those guys are gone now, all of them. So just to let you know. Hi, Nicholas. Well, I gotta go. I gotta go too, Rodney. Just Von Braun's secretary said he warned her. That was Carol Rosin. I've met Carol Rosin in the United Societies for Space. Um, I haven't got any other substantiation of any of the claims that she made. This was just her talking. What she said, Von Braun told him, but nobody else knew Von Braun, knew him well for years, made those kind of claims. So I don't know about Carol Rosin. She went to the United Societies of Space to push forth a leftist agenda for what was intended to be a space governance. And she wanted to make sure there's no weapons in space. Well, that sounds good. Except anything in space traveling with those velocities can be construed as a weapon. You can weaponize sand at orbital velocities. And what her platform was too broad. It's like, okay, name a specific weapon. No, she wouldn't do that. Name a specific weapon technology. She wouldn't do it. She got mad because me principally resisted her. I did. And she quit the organization. But when I joined that organization, they were talking, UN type language. They were talking, common heritage of mankind, communist type talk. And I thought, my God, this is scary. These guys are proposing, they're proposing a world government, really, space government that would rule everything in space and they want to call it Rouses. And they were going to have a constitutional convention. And so I joined them. I wound up being the chair of that constitutional convention. And no, it didn't wind up looking anything like how it started out. It wound up being very pro private enterprise, very pro freedom, and wide open. It was nothing like how it was to start out. And eventually the whole organization died out with the founder, Declan O'Donnell, who pumped millions of dollars into it. He passed away and the whole thing just kind of fizzled with him. And most of us are kind of happy to leave it there because we don't need a world government. But I felt like, y'all remember the Left Behind series where the pilot was one of the main characters in the Left Behind series. He became the pilot for the Antichrist. The whole time he was a Christian and he was spying on them. That's what I felt like. So very much. So sometimes the best way to lick them is to join them. So some say there's no such thing as a conspiracy theory. No such thing as a conspiracy. Excuse me? I am a conspiracy practitioner, not a conspiracy theorist. Oh, I've hatched a few other conspiracies for changing the board of the National Space Society, and I always succeeded at the time. Oh, yeah. And nobody knew what hit them. I was good at it. But it was all for freedom, for change, for growth. So that's the way I take it. But, that's just the way organizations operate. And people that want to deny that are just full of baloney. So anyway, Germany was like H-Man said, the First Reich, the Holy Roman Empire, the Second Reich, the German Empire, the Third Reich, Hitler's regime, which Nazis promised would last, 1,000 years. We'll see. That didn't happen. Well, they did a lot of nasty stuff, undoubtedly. And some people have tried to deny that. I'm going to tell you what. My dad's went to the old concentration camps, and what he saw there was ugly. So, yeah, my dad saw that stuff. My dad was in World War II, and you can find videos of my dad on this channel if you go back. He's some earlier videos. So, conspiracy realist, conspiracy practitioner. Forget theorist. Applied conspiracies, like applied sciences. There's the scientist and the engineer is the applied scientist, right? I like to make things real, put it in practice, make things work. I've always done that. So, oh yeah, Albert Einstein wasn't part of that group. He left much earlier. All righty, guys. So there you have it. The world is strange. And I'm a prepper. I became a prepper because I realized our society, our civilization was very fragile. And I discovered how fragile our grid was, and then the risk we faced for these nuclear power plant spent fuel rod pulls. I thought, I can't even prep for that. I got to do something about it. That's why I got involved with the power grid defense movement and wound up chairing 2 power grid defense conferences, became the Alabama state director of the MP Task Force on National Homeland Security, then became the Arizona state director, and now I'm the national director of aerospace technology for the same organization. So there you are. I've been promoted within an organization, and I got a paper to write, a book to write actually, which I'll be working on soon. So I don't just, like a lot of other YouTubers, a lot of other prepping channels, all they do is come in here and tell you, it's bad, get ready. I do tell you to get ready, but I also work on solutions. So I started the Freedom Restoration Foundation.org. Go check that out. We've also got a group with over 1,000 members on Facebook. So check that out too. FreedomRestorationFoundation.org. That's why I was with WWIII trying to get people organized into survival tribes. So we started Survival Tribe Network.org.com. I forget. I hadn't seen WWIII in a while. But anyway, well, Billy Wayne, you're worried. I say you got to keep your eyes wide open. I think for the background in Rocket City. Yeah, it's been in Rocket City. Trump didn't name it the Rocket City. It's been in Rocket City. You go into Huntsville, Alabama, you'll find a Rocket City cab company, a Rocket City tire company. In fact, I wanted to call the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society originally the Rocket City L5 Society, and all the other old folks from Huntsville said, no, we got a used car company, we got a tire company, we got a cab company. We don't want to name it that. It sounds cheap now. But no, the news always called it the Rocket City there, and proudly did so. And one of their monikers was "The sky's not the limit" in Huntsville, Alabama. So that's where it's been. Huntsville's been a high-tech town from a long way back. So War III is happening. It's not all of a sudden event. It takes years. Ken, you're right. And China's already at war with us, and I just keep telling people we're too dumb to know it. They're at economic war with us. They're trying to destroy our dollar. That's what BRICS is all about. They are staging their Belt and Roads Initiative is really just a logistics chain to try to support that. And it's a way to buy off other countries in the UN. They bought a lot of countries off in the UN to try to take the UN over with all the influencer buying in the global south, where every nation gets, a vote in the UN. No matter how big or how powerful you are, they all get a vote in the UN. And China and Russia are both on the UN Security Council, and you got to almost be unanimous out of that council to get anything through it. So good luck with that. Yeah, so China is rapidly evolving into becoming the new global hegemon. But the dragon is not nice, guys. If you think the dragon's nice, see what they're doing to the Uyghurs, see what they do to the Falun Gong, see what they're doing to the Tibetans, see how they treat the Mongolians in Inner Mongolia and their own people. See how they treat the Christians in China. China has a lot of Christians. I got no beef with the Chinese people at all. Taiwanese are Chinese people. I like Chinese people. But the country, as ran today by the CCP, is corrupt to the core and is very aggressive. And they got designs on all of us. I've been warning you guys about that for a long time. Yeah, I agree, Arnold Smith. if you look at the chairman of the Fed, he don't want to, he didn't want to cut interest rates. Well, now the jobs reports are down. He's kept them artificially high just to try to hurt Trump. So that's what Trump wants to replace him, Jerome Powell. But we'll see how that goes. When they found the Fed, 1913. All the plan get hatched out by a certain group of elites meeting on Jekyll Island in Georgia in secret. Jekyll and Hyde, right? Jekyll Island kind of fits. And they also passed income tax and all kind of mess in 1913. So maybe we can shake ourselves loose of some of that. I would probably like to go into some of the latest from Peter Thiel, some of his theology about the Antichrist and things like that, and Armageddon. I think I'll save that for another video because that's going to be quite a discussion, and it's getting late, and I got to hit the sack. I got to be up in about 4 hours. India now has more people than China. China overreported their population, and India's been growing like great bounds. India's a English-speaking nation. They may actually be a democracy. I don't know. They claim to be a democracy. Could be republic, but they claim to be a democracy. So I don't know. But whatever the case is, the Hindu faith, they'll defend themselves. We saw the war with Pakistan. They'll definitely defend themselves, and they got good defense systems. They're smart people. But the Hindus aren't typically as aggressive no, they don't treat Christians well, from what I hear from my friend Steve Poplar, but they're not as aggressive as the Chinese by any or many other groups out there in the world today. And we had the chance because of all the military tensions and fights and actual wars and combats and border skirmishes between India and China to flip India to our side, and then Trump basically just drove India toward China. So maybe that can be fixed. I don't know. But we need India as an ally if we're dealing with China. Unless we totally withdraw and take this, you stay out of our sphere and we stay out of your sphere of influence approach. And I don't know if we could actually pull that off, to be frank, because China probably won't honor that either. And I did some consultation with AI back several months ago, and it basically indicated we can't avoid a war with China. It's coming whether we like it or not. And like I said, I think we're already there. I think this whole business of this opioid, this drug that we call, that I nicknamed F-ball, just so I don't get strikes here, it took out 250 million Americans. I consider that war by other means. So, and there may be biological stuff in the kitchen cooking up. And what was that biological lab in Reedy, California? How many more of those are here? Yeah, there's just too many questions, guys. It's not pretty. It's when you got to really get ready. Tony, Greg, sorry. What are we sorry about there, Tony? And we need India. Yeah. Actually, we need to work on Mexico. You realize the Mexican economy would boom if they weren't all caught up in that drug cartel mess. Because they got a young demographic, make a great labor source and a great economic ally of the United States if it weren't for the stupid drug cartels. So if Mexico could shake those off, Mexico would grow like nobody else. Mexican economy would boom. It would zoom. It would be awe-inspiring. And it could do it if it weren't being choked by the drug cartels. That's another story. Those stinking drug cartels, which are being bankrolled by Chinese banks. Yes, believe it or not. All right, I won't too long. I've talked too much. I said too many things. So let's call it a night here. Hey, I'm just ever thankful here tonight that y'all all been here. So once again, salute Hawaii girl. Thank you for the grand, beautiful super chat. And I want to thank all you mods for keeping the channel clean, and just everybody again for watching. Please comment on my stuff below. Please share my video. The platform likes to stomp on me. Um, Probably because I know too much. I watch videos and people have no clue what they're talking about. They get 40 times more views than me when they got a channel like, a quarter the size of mine or smaller in terms of subscribers. It's like, really? I don't begrudge anybody getting views. I'm just wondering why I don't not get any here. So help me out. Hit the like button, comment on the comments below, and share my videos because you're the guys that help us get the word out. Because I do the research, I do I'm an engineer. I can understand things technically. I've been doing geopolitical analysis for years, and I was reading books on military strategy. I mean, big, thick ones when I was in like ninth grade. I started that when I was in middle school. Seriously, guys, I was really studying this stuff from way back. And so, given all that, I don't watch sports. I don't know what is on television. I got no clue. I don't watch television. I don't know jack deal about pop culture hardly. The latest music, I don't know what that stuff is. Don't want to know. Don't like it when I hear it. I spend all my time trying to figure out what the heck's going on in the world and how to be ready for it. Doing my day job and doing my homestead. And also, I got a couple of inventions I'm working on. So maybe I can do something with those. And a whole new product line I'll introduce you guys to in the not too distant future. Clean stuff, American made, no contamination, no chemicals, small family company. It's good stuff. We'll talk about that later. Maybe not too long from now. But anyway, guys, once again, thank you all for being here. I just went over an hour. I didn't mean to do that. I got to hit the hay. But y'all, just hard for me to get away from you guys because I really appreciate y'all. We're family. So once again, let me go. I'm going to go here to the right buttons and find the right things. I hope you enjoy that. The video is, I hope the video quality is better. I hope the sound quality is better. I've been investing in trying to bring you a better video. I hope you can enjoy that. It's takes a little bit of expense to do that, but I think it's worth it if y'all enjoy it. Somebody put a infinity in there. Oh, Pyramid 7's in the house. Yay! Yo, yo, yo. What's the infinity symbol for? Greg, you are having a greater effect than can be seen by clicks and likes. Well, thank you there. Appreciate that, Drew Hurst. So, appreciate that from you guys, definitely. Pyramid 7. It's good to see her in the house. One of my first two mods I ever had. So, yeah, I plan to be on Leap Project. Probably, I don't know when he's going to air it, but I think we're doing the interview tomorrow. I'm going to talk about what I talked about on Galactic Greg's. Go see my Galactic Greg's video on 3i Atlas. Go check that out. There's a link in the post section of this video where you can go to my Galactic Greg's channel. Subscribe over there too. That channel got demonetized because I couldn't put out enough videos fast enough to keep YouTube satisfied. I may get that problem over my Soulhead News, but I got to put some content over here. This is my main channel. This is where most of you come. Alrighty, guys. Once again, thank you, mods. Thank you, super chatters. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And with that, I'm going to say ho, ho, ho. Hey, Lou. A good night to one and all. Ho, ho, ho. A good day, wherever you are. And with that,